Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Father Jerome, for this invitation to share my stories about Cardinal Sin, who was Archbishop of Manila from 1974 to 2003. I was ordained by Cardinal Sin on September 29, 1984. I was then 24 years old. Tingnan nyo na ako ngayon. I finished my ecclesiastical studies in Baltimore, Maryland. My parents were American citizens who migrated to the United States in the 1970s, and I found myself studying with the Jesuits at St. Peter's University in New Jersey, USA, finishing philosophy and theology. So I decided to enter the seminary. I came home to the Philippines. Instead of serving the American church, I chose to serve the church in the Philippines. And my question was, submit myself to the Archbishop of Manila. So there I went. I went to his office, asked for an appointment, and I asked him, Your Eminence, will I study here in the Philippines, in Manila, or study in Rome or USA? He said, good question. Go to Bishop Rosales in Antipolo. Gaudencio Rosales was one of his auxiliary bishops, and his residence was at the Antipolo Church, Our Lady of Peace and Good Voyage. There I went. I had an appointment with the good bishop, whom you know became Archbishop of Manila. I told him that the Cardinal sent me, asked me to get his advice, and whatever his decision is, then that I should follow. Bishop Rosales said, where are your parents? And my answer, in the United States, Excellency. And he said, go back to the United States and study there. And all throughout, I did my theologate at St. Mary's Seminary and University, the oldest American seminary. And there I studied for 4 years, and every year a letter was sent to the Cardinal about my evaluation, and always, very uniquely, the Cardinal would answer me, congratulating me, even typing at an old typewriter. Why? Because the letters were jumping left and right. And he said to me, excuse me, Jerry, because my old typewriter is the one I'm using. I did not ask that my secretary answers it for me. That was my first experience of Cardinal Sin. An experience of loving seminarians as well as his priests. Let us situate this gathering this evening through the optic of a statement by the Synod of Bishops of 1971. Remember this, because during our time, during the difficult times of the Marcos regime, this statement was read again and again to us. And I quote, action on behalf of justice and participation in the transformation of society fully appear to us as a constitutive dimension of the proclamation of the good news. Simply put, evangelization, which is the mission of the church, includes working for justice and peace. And therefore, it is part and parcel of our mission as church to speak on behalf of the poor. Why? Because a phrase that we learned so well in the seminary at that time was preferential option for the poor. That became the springboard, and that became the mission of Cardinal Sin. In other words, engaging in socio-political life in a given society is part and parcel of the mission of the church. Now, moving on further, and Father Jerome mentioned this, I think 2 days ago in his sharing, the constitutional provision of the separation of church and state Let us be very clear about that, because during my young years as a priest, this was discussed again and again to us. And that is that the provision is not directed to the church, not to meddle in politics. Wrong. The constitutional provision of separation of church and state simply means, number one, there is no official religion in our country. Unlike the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, in which the official religion is Islam. No other religion is acceptable in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And therefore, Saudi Arabia is an Islamic state. In the Philippines, people enjoy what we call religious freedom. Second is that the government does not subsidize any religious group, would never use taxpayers' money in supporting one religious group. Precisely these are the two expressions of the separation of church and state. It is not the church meddling in politics. The church speaking about God means that God should be in politics. That is very clear. The engagement in the socio-political arena was the role played by our Filipino bishops in the presidential elections of 1986. Please take note, during this time, the president of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines was Cardinal Ricardo Vidal of Cebu, and the vice president was Jaime Cardinal Sin of Manila. Towards the end of the month, the despot Ferdinand Marcos left a country he had despoiled for decades, and the Philippines in bondage recaptured its freedom. It recovered its freedom in large measure because the CBCP had declared in its post-election statement of 1986 that the polls were unparalleled in the fraudulence of their conduct, in the systematic disenfranchisement of voters, widespread and massive vote buying, deliberate tampering with election returns, intimidation, harassment, terrorism, and murder. Let me give an example. I was in charge of the young people in South Manila at that time, being assistant parish priest of Bishop Teodoro Bacani, who was auxiliary bishop of Manila. I was in charge of the young people, taking turns to see that the polling places are safe. I was called in one high school. I was wearing my cassock, and at that time there was no PPCRD yet. It was only NAMFREL, the National Movement for Free Elections. Tumatango ang aking mga kaedad dito. Kasi NAMFREL sila. National Movement for Free Election was started by what we call the civil society groups. So we were manning polling places all over Metro Manila and the provinces. NAMFREL is a product of civil society headed by Mr. Joe Concepcion. I was called and said, "Father, panik ka sa taas kasi nagdala ng baril yung sundalo." So sabi ko, sige, pumanig ako sa taas, third floor yon. May isang sundalong hawak-hawak ay Armalite. Kaharap niya ang isang RGS sister, Religious of the Good Shepherd. Nagtatalo yung dalawa. Ang sabi, "Umalis ka dito, madre ka. Problema ka dito eh. Bawal yan eh." Sabi ng madre, "Hindi ako aalis dito." Jerry, sabihin mo sa kanya, "Hindi ako aalis dito." Siguro naman, sister, narinig niya, no? Hindi ka aalis dito eh. So ang sabi niya, sabihin mo sa kanya, siya ang umalis. Sabi niya ganon. Sabi ko, "Sir, kasi bawal ho sa COMELEC guidelines na magdala ng baril sa loob ng polling places. Bawal po yun. Kaya kung pwede lang ho, lumabas ho kayo." Sabi ng madre, "Nakita mo, hindi ka nakikinig sa'yo? Hindi ako aalis dito. Barilin mo na ako." Sabi ko, "Sister, mahinahon po tayo. Kasi ayaw ho natin na magkagulo dito, nagbobotohan pa ho, nagtitingin na nasa yung mga tao. So, yung sundalo, palabas na at dinuro kaming dalawa. Ang sabi niya, kayong mga pari at madre, pakialamero kayo, pakialamero. So sabi ko, sige sister, dito ka na lang. Maiwan ka dito. So, wala pa nung cellphone wala pa nung means of communication. Pero sinabi ni Bishop Bacani, see to it that all NAMFREL poll watchers have candles and flashlights. And I was wondering why? Why? Yung pala, gabi, talagang mamamatay ang ilaw. At namatay nga ang ilaw habang nagbibilang. Kaya automatic, ang mga NAMFREL nagsindi ng kandila habang nagbibilang. Wala pa nung mga machines, talagang mano-mano ang pagbibilang. Ang ginawa namin ay pagdadala ng mga ballot boxes sa City Hall. At yung pagbubuhat na yon, exciting. Habang binubuhat namin, nakasindi ang mga kandila at nagdadasal ng rosaryo. Sabi ko, iba talaga ang karosa ngayon. Ito ng polling boxes. So nagpunta kami doon at ang sabi nila, tanggap na dito. Sige na Jerry, okay na. Anyway, it is said that a day after elections, the decision of the bishops of our country was to meet at the CPCP building in Intramuros to discuss the events of the elections of 1986. The CPCP members, convened by the two officials, Cardinal Vidal and Cardinal Sin, convened a meeting with two questions. The two questions that were asked were, number one, was there massive fraud and violence in the election? And number two, did the massive fraud and violence change the result of the elections? And there was consultation. There was consultation among the different groups, not only NAMFREL, but also priests, religious, everyone. At the end of the day, it is said, and it was Bishop Bacani who was informing me, because I was his assistant in Paco Catholic Church, the bishops were requested to go to the chapel to pray for 1 holy hour before the Blessed Sacrament. And there they prayed. Immediately after that 1 hour, a vote was cast. What was the answer to the two questions? Yes, there was massive fraud and violence that marred the elections of February 1986. And number two, the result of the elections changed, resulting into that the real winner was not declared. And thus, what was written is now the classic post-election statement of 1986, in which the bishops proclaimed, a government that assumes or retains power through fraudulent means has no moral basis. We do not advocate a bloody, violent means of righting this wrong. The way indicated to us now is active resistance by peaceful means in the manner of Christ. End of quote. While this was going on, dear friends, something was brewing in Malacanang. Two key officials, Mr. Enrile and General Ramos, bolted out of the Marcos administration. The bishops were not aware of this. Marcos claimed a failed coup, so things were volatile. And these men called Cardinal Sin for help. And Cardinal Sin responded, willing to help. He called them our friends, which means a lot. Why? Because these people were in danger. So, our country recaptured its freedom because a cardinal called uncounted thousands to the streets to arrest tanks of war with rosaries and marigolds, with orchids and their unarmed bodies. It was the night of the 21st of February when Bishop Ted Bacani came home and was worried. It was around 11 o'clock at night. He called me in my room and he said, "Come down, please wear your cassock." And I was wondering, wear my cassock at 11 o'clock at night. So when I went down, he was with 3 other people, and he said, "See to it you call Cardinal Sin." So the first thing I did was to answer him, "Excellency, it's 11:30 at night. He might be asleep, but call him anyway." So nang tumawag ako, sumagot yung guard ng Villa San Miguel, "Si Cardinal Sin, Father, tulog na po eh." "O, sige po, sige, goodbye na po." Okay. "Bishop, tulog na daw po si Cardinal." He was pacing back and forth and he was disturbed. And I said, "Bishop, is there anything wrong? You don't know what is happening. You don't know what is happening. The leftists might take over. I am just very disturbed. Call him again." "Eh, tulog na nga ho." "Basta tumawag ka." So, nag-dial naman ako. Ang sumagot na, si Father Sok. Sabi niya, "Oh, Jer, ano yon?" "So, gustong makausap ni Bishop Ted si Cardinal." "O, eto siya." Nag-usap yung dalawa. Ang naririnig ko lang, "Yes, Your Eminence. Yes, Your Eminence. Thank you, Your Eminence. Thank you, Your Eminence. Yes, Your Eminence." Sabi ko sa sarili ko, ano yun? Anyway, he hung up and he said, "Jerry, call the youth of the district." "Okay po." "Get jeepneys." "Okay po." "Punta kayo sa EDSA." "Bakit po?" "Punta kayo doon." "Ano pong gagawin namin doon?" "Basta doon lang kayo. Kasi tatawag ng mga tao si Cardinal Sin." "Ah, okay po. Sige po." So I began to call. Remember at that time, the telephone was doing this. Ang lakas ng itong na ito, ganun sila ng ganun. Talagang may may they can really sympathize with me, no? This group, gumaganon sila. Nagda-dial ako. I dialed mga 10 or 15 numbers and all of them were still awake. Young people were still awake at that time. And they came. And I got 5 jeepneys. Sabi ko, "Bishop, hanggang kailan po kami doon?" "I will tell you when to come back." "Ah, okay." So, okay po. So, pumunta na kami doon. Doon dumating na kami sa harap ng krame. Labasan na. Dumadami na yung tao. So, sabi ng mga kabataan, "Anong gagawin natin, Father, dito?" So, magdadasal tayo. "Sige, magrosaryo." Pagkatapos po, magrosaryo ulit. Tapusin natin ang lahat ng misteryo ng rosaryo. So sabi nila, 3:00 na ho ng umaga. Then basta dasal tayo. Mabuti yung isa, nagdala ng gitara, meron kaming umaawit kami. And we stayed there. We stayed there for 4 days. We were only listening through Radio Veritas until Radio Veritas transmitters were bombed. And then eventually, we went to Radio Bandido, where we heard the voice of Jun Kitli. And always, every 15-20 minutes, you would hear the Cardinal saying the following words: "A new Filipino self is emerging with a higher level of reflective power and a greater impulse that moves forward to the direction of truth, freedom, and justice." Up to now, why? Every 15 minutes, I would hear that statement. So now, 41 years after, I would still listen and hear those words from Cardinal Sin. Eventually, I called again and Bishop Ted Bacani said, "Come back here, we need you here." Okay. So when I came back just by myself, he said, "There are soldiers coming from Bicol and they are stepping down at Paco Station. See to it that they are fed well. Paco Catholic School is cooking hot food for them. So there are 3 Canossian sisters here to accompany you. O sige po, Bishop. So, nagdala na kami doon. Dinala namin sa may Otis, where Robinson's Otis is. And we were there. And when we were there, what happened? Sabi namin, dala namin, sisters, halina kayo. Nung palapit na kami, sabi nung general ba yun? Sabi niya, tigil kayo! Tigil! Sabi ko, sister, tigil daw. O yan, gagawin natin. Pagkain lang ho ang dala namin para sa mga sundalo. Alam po namin, galing kayo sa Bicol, pagod po kayo at nagugutom. Ito po yung pagkain. Tigil kasi pag hindi kayo tumigil, babarilin namin kayo. So sabi ko, sister, tigil na po tayo. So sabi ngayon nung 3 madre, hindi, huwag ka maniwala dyan, hindi tayo babarilin. Hindi. Sinabi, hindi tayo babarilin yan. Sabi ko, ano po, o sige, sisters, mauna kayo sa akin. Yun talaga plano ko Mapilit Sabi nila, hindi, matatapang yung Canossian sisters Dito kayo sa harap ko. Kasi ang plano ko, pag nagkabarilan na, hahawakan ko sila. Silang shield ko. Duwag talaga. Siyempre, isang taon pa lang ako pare. Sila matatanda na, mamatay na sila, di ba? Alokohan ko talaga. Batang pare ako Sige, sister, mauna po kayo. Sabi ko na ako bahala dyan. Yung maliit na madre, yung Canossian. Sister Carmel, ang pangalan niya. Sister Carmel. Sabi ako bahala. Silakad na. Nung palapit na kami, babalay namin kayo. Gumano na. Pinasahan na kami. Sabi ng madre, ay, tototohanin. So sabi ko, tinutotoo nga Pwede ba? Sir, iwan na lang ho namin yung pagkain dito. Dito na lang po. Kung kayo na po ang kumuha. Sisters, lakad na po tayo. Oo, susunod na. Sumakay na kami sa Fiera. Fiera pa nun Nagdadrive na ako. Sister, sa ulitin, ako in charge Marunong pa kayo sa akin. Sabi niya isa, duwag ka lang Hindi, nagpapakatotoo lang ako. Mahal ko pa buhay ko. Wala pa akong 2 taong pare. Those were the many experiences of EDSA. And then immediately when I went to Paco, the bishop said, sige na, balik ka uli. Balik ka uli sa EDSA. You know, our country recaptured its freedom because a cardinal called uncounted thousands to the streets to arrest tanks of war with rosaries and marigolds, with orchids and unarmed bodies, as I've mentioned. Cardinal Sin is the 14th child of 16 children. Galing, Of a Filipina mestiza and a Chinese father. In his commencement address at Georgetown University, he received the honoris causa from Georgetown University. It is said that the Catholic Church in the Philippines has been accused of interfering in politics, but the Church was simply defending the human rights of the people. It was the state that was violating human rights, such as people driven off their land by the military, a priest shot through the heart at 6 inches for championing their cause. Cardinal Sin was accused of interfering in politics because he wrote a pastoral letter to his people, not vote for Cory or vote for Marcos, but vote honestly according to your conscience. And because he wrote to his people about bribery, do not sell your vote, but if anyone offers you money, take it and vote according to your conscience. How justify taking the pesos? Because the money is yours anyway. It was stolen from the people. In another pastoral letter, Cardinal Sin pleaded with those in charge of the counting, please do not cheat. Let the votes of the people be counted. And the appeal worked. 30 of the computer operators walked out because they were putting into computers was coming out in the official tally. When Cardinal Sin asked the people to go out into the streets to come krame, they came out at once. Cardinal Sin was born on August 31, 1928 in New Washington, Aklan. He was the 14th of 16 children, though of these, only 9 survived. While his siblings grew up healthy and strong, Jaime was frail and suffered from severe asthma. Because of his delicate condition, he became especially dear to his mother, whom he lovingly called Mimay. Although Jaime had weak lungs, this did not prevent him from speaking boldly. He possessed a remarkable gift for speech and humor. His intelligence and eloquence stood out early, and his mother became convinced that her beloved son was meant to be offered to the Lord. He did not need any persuasion. Becoming a priest has been a childhood dream of Jaime Sin. And as a boy, he would ride his bicycle to teach catechism and eagerly join religious processions. He even loved pretending to celebrate Mass in Latin. And before finishing grade school, he decided to enter the seminary in Iloilo. While his mother joyfully supported his vocation, the father opposed the decision, hoping that his son would become a businessman. However, his mother firmly stood, Jaime should be a priest. So in 1941, Jaime entered St. Vincent's Seminary, and that same year, his mother was diagnosed with cancer. And soon after, World War II broke out, interrupting his studies and forcing him to return to New Washington. Yet his mother did not allow the war to extinguish his vocation. She sent him to Calibo, Aklan, to assist a priest there. And with a mixture of humor and wisdom, she would say that the greatest threat to her son's vocation was not the Japanese army, but the many beautiful young women around him. As her illness worsened, she called Jaime. On her deathbed, she made her final request. When his father asked if there was anything more he could do for her, she replied firmly that this boy, Jaime, becomes a priest. And if he does not become a priest because of you, I will rise from my grave to squeeze your neck. And these powerful words deeply marked Jaime's heart. The cardinal even said, immediately after he said those words, she died. After his mother's death, Jaime became even more determined to fulfill both his own calling and his mother's dream. And indeed, nearing ordination, he feared that his fragile health might prevent him from becoming a priest. His spiritual director even advised him to withdraw, believing the priesthood would be too heavy a burden for his weak body. Around this time, a statue of the Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal arrived from Spain. You know where that statue is now? There. That is the original Miraculous Medal. The seminary infirmary was located behind the chapel where the statue was placed. And one evening, after the seminarians had finished their prayers and gone to dinner, Jaime painfully crawled from the infirmary to the chapel. There, before the Blessed Mother, he prayed earnestly, Blessed Mother, you are powerful, cure me. From the moment I become well, wherever I go, I will proclaim your name. Jaime said. He wrote this promise in a letter, signed it with his blood, and placed it beneath the statue. Soon after, Jaime was healed of his asthma. Doctors were astonished. Miracle or not, it became clear to everyone that he was he was destined to become a priest. In his heart, a covenant had been made between him and the Blessed Mother. In offering himself completely to God, Mary would guide and trust the church to a priest whose very name sounded like sin. It was a unique and providential story that would unfold through 5 decades of service and challenges. For Cardinal Sin, it was always Mary. And I'd like to closely end my sharing. Please take note, what happened in 86 is from my reading, the gift of Mary to our people. Why? Because in 1985, the bishops of our country declared the National Marian Year with the threefold direction of COR, conversion, offertory, reparation. All of us in the Philippines were so engaged in celebrating the 2000th birthday of the Blessed Virgin Mary. We attended conferences, celebrations, rosaries, convening young people in De La Salle, in Ateneo. And significant is that in the National Marian Year of 1985, in November, Mr. Marcos decided to call for snap elections in February. Everything is mobilized. What happened in 86 is the story of God being woven in the life of the story of our people. And the weaver is Mary. The instrument was Cardinal Sin. And let me end. During those fateful days, it was Father Sok who shared this to me. Immediately, when Mr. Ramos and Mr. Ramos and Mr. Enrile called him for help, the Cardinal went to his private chapel at Villa San Miguel and there prayed. And the first act of Cardinal Sin was to call for the 3 contemplative orders of nuns, namely the Carmelites, the Pink Sisters, and the Poor Clares. He even said, please expose the Blessed Sacrament and with lifted arms, pray for our people. And do not bring them down until I tell you to do so. Like Moses against the Amalekites. His first move was prayer. His last move was prayer. Lastly, you know too well that he underwent dialysis. And we are told that when the instruments for dialysis was being punctured to him, a very painful move, he was praying the litany of the Blessed Virgin Mary. For Cardinal Sin, it was always Mary. For Cardinal Sin, Mary brings us to Jesus. The miracle of EDSA is because of Mary. In the Second Plenary Council of the Philippines, when there were certain voices among some sectors that questioned the validity of the spiritual dimension of EDSA, Cardinal Sin stood before the council and once again said that EDSA was a moral spiritual uprising. That is why here, painted by Nemi, is the image of Our Lady hovering over EDSA. Why? Because Cardinal Sin shared to us a story that while 2 helicopters were about to shoot the people to disperse, according to him, the 2 pilots who were about to shoot the people to disperse, a lady in white appeared and said, "Stop. I am the queen of this land. Do not shoot my people." Those 2 pilots joined the ranks of people power and immediately were brought to Villa San Miguel to have an audience with Cardinal Sin. Was there a miracle? The answer is yes. And the miracle continues. And the miracle will continue because we have so many young people here.